Hi guys, so today I'm going to be showing you how to draw this dog's nose, and you'll only need 5 bits of equipment for this. You'll need a piece of paper. I've used an HB pencil, a 6B pencil, a putty eraser, and as an optional extra I've used a black polychromos pencil. I've popped links in the description for all of the materials I'm using today. So let's get on with the drawing. Now the first thing to do is to get the nose sketched out. To do this I'm using an HB pencil and I'm just very lightly sketching this out. I don't want the lines to be really hard because I don't want them to show through at the end. As far as the shape goes, the nose is looking slightly to the side, which means that the nostrils aren't symmetrical. So I'm just making sure that I really look at the reference photo that I'm drawing and try and match the shapes that I can see as well as possible. The best thing to do is to really take your time over the sketch, really look at the shapes that you can see, and as with everything, practice makes perfect. Now let's move on to the shading. I'm going to shade the nose using a few different layers. The first layer I'm going to do is with the HB pencil, and initially I'm just trying to get some sort of shading down on the paper. I'm not stressing out about being too precise at the moment, I'm just trying to get some sort of base to work from. The absolute first thing I like to do is to shade in the very darkest areas. So on this dog's nose, this would be the nostrils. And once I've done that, I'm going to gently shade in the lights and darks. I'm not going to be concerned at all about texture at the moment. I'm just focusing on getting down a smooth base. To try and get this as smooth as possible, I'm using the side of the pencil rather than using the tip down on the paper. And I'm doing this relatively quickly. As I say, it doesn't need to be too precise. It's just a case of getting down a base layer and mapping in where the lights and darks are. So the darker bits are particularly around the nostrils. There's a darker bit towards the middle bottom of the nose, and then round the very bottom of the nose, either side, it gets pretty dark. I always find it helpful to remember that darker parts of the picture create an illusion of being pushed back, whereas lighter areas create an illusion of being pulled forward. So I'm bearing that in mind while I draw. And now I'm happy with my base, I'm going to use a tissue to get that all blended together and make it look much smoother. And I'm doing this in little circular motions. Up next, I'm going to start adding the first bits of texture in with the HB pencil. The most prominent textured areas are around the tip of the nose and then going down the centre. Around the nostrils and the bottom, and really the whole way around the edge, it gets much smoother and the textured areas kind of taper out. So it's the centre and down the middle that I'm particularly focusing on. As far as the actual shapes that I'm drawing on here, it's kind of a mixture between hexagons, pentagons and triangles, and it's all a little bit random. Now it's not a case of perfectly matching the reference photo because that would be very tricky. The main thing to look at is the sizes of the shapes. Around the middle they're quite large, and then towards the top as the nose slopes back, they get much thinner and smaller. So I want to draw that in to create the illusion of the shape of the nose. As this is quite a big nose that I'm drawing here, I'm able to really go into detail of the texture. If I was drawing the nose as part of the rest of a dog's face and it was much smaller, I would draw little circles as opposed to trying to get all of these obscure shapes. So you do have to adjust the drawing depending on the size of the object that you're drawing. As well as the little circles of texture, there is also a few creases. So I'm also mapping those in as I go. There's a very prominent crease down the centre, and then at the bottom there's also some prominent creases either side, and a few others working their way up the middle. So I'm getting those marked in. I'm expecting this to be the most time-consuming part of the whole drawing. Now that I've got all of that mapped out, I'm going to blend again in exactly the same way with the tissue, just to blend it in with the rest of the drawing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is start using a darker pencil, and I'm going to use the 6B. This is going to darken the values in the drawings and add more contrast. So I'm going to go through very similar steps to the steps I've already been through. I'm going to start off by getting the darkest areas very dark again, particularly focusing on the nostrils. And then I'm going to start going over darker some of the lines that I made previously. I'm particularly focusing on making the lines darker around the nostrils and down the centre, but I am adding little bits on other areas of the nose. And once I've done that, I'm going to start refining and deepening down the shading over the top. When I'm refining and adding to the shading, I do find when I think I'm finished, it helps to step back and have a look. Often when you're looking at something really close up, it's hard to see what's wrong. By stepping back and looking at the picture as a whole, it's just much easier to see which areas need to be darker. So I'm going to keep going through and adding to the shading until I'm happy with how it's looking. And then I'm going to blend it one last time. Now, because I've blended it 3 times, you can see the light areas on the drawing aren't as light as they need to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my putty eraser and start putting those areas of light back in. The benefit of drawing with graphite pencil is it is very easy to erase, so you can get your base really smooth and then you can add detail in with a putty eraser. So I'm going to shape my putty eraser into a point and then I can use it to be far more accurate. I'm very gently using it around the edge to pull back some of that graphite and just lighten it up. And I'm also using it to pull some of the graphite off of the center of some of the shapes that I've made. And this helps to make those shapes look far more defined. As I'm erasing some of the graphite on the shapes, I'm focusing more on doing that at the top of the shape because the light is more towards the top of the picture coming down. Also, there's a few creases on the nose, and around those creases there are some areas of light. So I am just looking at my reference and pulling back some of that graphite where I want to put some light back in. And once I've erased all the areas that I need to erase, I'm going to go back in with a sharp 6B pencil and put in any little details. So I'm adding to the textured area again, still focusing around those nostrils. Also towards the top of the nose, where the nose ends and the fur begins, there's an area where it's half nose, half hair. So I'm putting some little baby hairs up there and just generally increasing the sharpness of the lines that got blurred when I blended. Now, as I get towards the end of this section, I could leave it here, but what I'm going to do is use a black polychromos pencil to make my darks really dark. With graphite pencil, when you thoroughly shade an area, it becomes quite shiny and quite reflective. Whereas the polychromos pencil is very matte, meaning that if I put it down on the darkest parts, they will look much darker than with the graphite pencil. I've picked a polychromos pencil specifically because they're very easy to get into a fine point, so I'm able to be very accurate with the marks I make. So I'm using it to get the nostrils very, very dark, some of the lines around the nostrils to get them very crisp and dark, and down the centre line as well. I'm primarily using it with the tip of the pencil to get into those little lines, but I am also using the side of the pencil to blend, for example, the nostrils into the rest of the nose a bit. So I'll go over a few of the other little details and that's it. Please do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my tutorials, and don't forget to hit the like button if you found this video helpful. Happy drawing, guys. I'll see you in the next one.